But what I want to do now is give you some ammo, some ammunition about, as the person being the human duct tape, driving this work, how do you do it? How do you make it happen? As we know, sending out a memo of everybody to be customer focused or etching customer on a crystal ball, all of these things which many of us have seen in our life, are not going to change behavior, are not going to unite leaders in a deliberate way. And what I know from having been a customer leadership executive and a zealot for these 35 years is that in this role, more than almost any other, we prosper by standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us, by connecting in a fearless way with the people doing the work now to figure out and to break the work into bite-sized pieces. And so that's really that's really what I want to do with you and for you here, is to give you my recipe card, the inside of the black box, my kit bag on how to start to drive that work forward. Here's the reality that we live in, though, which is that most of our organizations are made up of silos. These may not be your silos exactly. You can simply insert which ones are yours. But what happens inside of these silos is we do great work, but we do great work separately. And the customer bumps and jumps across each of these operational silos. Our work is really to unite the organization to deliver an experience. And what happens at the beginning of this work, as I talk to people, is that this is what we're delivering. We're accidentally, because we're silo-driven, delivering a random experience. Has anybody ever called an airline twice? I kind of call it service Russian roulette. Because the first time you call, you're going to get a lady, and she's probably a really smart, great lady, but she's a policy cop, right? So she's going to tell you what you're doing wrong. She's going to tell you why you can't do it. And so you think, no, goodbye, thank you, but no. And then you call, and you happen to get somebody who's been there for a long time, who knows how to navigate the rules, and she helps you to get to your solution, so you feel better. But that's still random, right? Because the answer to the question is, it depends. The work is to move us past forcing our frontline people to be heroics and to enable heroes by working and getting rid of all the back-end muck and process breakdowns and things that they have to work around so they can deliver reliably. You know, are there 15 screens they have to toggle between? Are there rules that they have to, unfortunately, deliver to the customer? I happen to have millions and millions of miles with an airline. And I went in the other day and I said I had lost a card, and could I have another card? Now, this was not the fault of the frontline person, but so I'm at the highest level you could possibly be with this airline. She said, well, that'll be $35, please. Oh, sorry about the snort. What we call that is a stupid rule, right? We've got to create a kill a stupid rule movement to get rid of these things that get in the way of delivering an experience. And so what we want to do is get to reliability, but not reliability in terms of boiling the ocean. Has anybody started to try to do touchpoint mapping? What touchpoint mapping is trying to identify all of the intersection points that you have with your customer. Now, we did this at Land's End. We knew there were about 323, but I'm here to tell you, don't boil the ocean. Of that 323, there's probably 10 to 15. So the work here is to get to the 10 to 15, to start to unite your organization to deliver in a reliable way. In your business model, just being reliable in the moments that matter the most in their life is going to set you apart. Now, my last little rant is, everybody talks about the word loyalty. Loyalty, however, for me, has become something that is something we want to go get from customers. I want to get more loyal customers. I want more loyalty dollars. Instead, travel with me, will you, to opening your mind to the idea of desire. Desire connects directly to the customer experience discipline, meaning if you earn the right to desire, it means you've architected an experience deliberately, starting with their emotion, that improves their life, that they want to have again. And if a customer wants to have an experience again, what does that drive? growth, revenue, profitability, recommendations, and you know what that makes it? The cha-ching emotion. I don't know why I lift my leg when I do that. Sorry. Oh, I'm so terrible. So, I want to talk a little bit more about reliability because what happens inside of these organizations, and I work with a lot of CEOs around the world, they'll go to a conference, they'll get all riled up, and they'll come back and they'll say, we got to work on the wow moments. Let's work on the most important reliability moments first because we need to deliver where the customer needs. I'm not against layering the wow in, but you first got to get to reliability. If you go to a hotel and they ask you what kind of pillow you want and what kind of chocolate you want in the bed, but there's hair in the sink and dirt under the bed, you don't care about all the money they've spent on all that stuff. So let's get to reliability first, which leads me to 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Anybody know 1-800-GOT-JUNK? It's in the dog book. Started by a guy named Brian Scudamore who had a pile of junk, maybe not this big. But what he wanted to do was find out how to get rid of it. So we went into Yellow Pages. He went on the internet. He looked for junk guy. You don't know what's going to show up. You don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know if you want these people walking around in your house or whatever. And so what he started was having a very clear clarity of purpose. He wanted to become the FedEx of junk. The FedEx of junk. So, like FedEx, he modeled the junk removal experience to be reliable. When you call in or connect with the junction, they will schedule your appointment within a 1-hour period of time. They show up when they say they're going to. They have on uniforms. They have these Isuzu trucks that are beautiful and new, not some old rusty thing with a muffler dragging out. They will do what they say they will do and more. They will take your old car battery. They will take your old clothes places. I send my old clothes to the Society for the Blind. My 17-year-old at the time said, good thing your clothes are so ugly they won't be able to see them. Who can relate to that? But by doing the basics right, they have become the largest junk removal company in the world. If they can do that with junk, just think what you can do. But here's some sobering facts from our friends at Net Promoter. 1 in 5 customers say bad experiences lead them to switch brands. When we think about experience, go back to that deliberateness. Do you know the key 5 to 10 where you need to make sure you're always reliable? 20% of customers switch due to low service or product quality. And 34% say experiences come from a rude or disinterested employee. Cross out the word employee and say instead company. Because now what this means is if I sent in a request to your internet on your website and you never got back to me, or if I asked for a review of my portfolio and nothing ever came back, this shows lack of interest. So in a world of quick response time, many things are translated to disinterest these days. Does that make sense? I want to give you some ammo because throughout the world as I do this, and I know you need this ammo to say this isn't kumbaya, this is growth, this is business growth. We do this, we are going to build a customer-driven growth engine. My first piece of ammo for you is from something I call the Hospitality Quotient Index, which I thought would be great for you because companies that grow because they take care of human lives and they also improve their business results. They also do something tangible and something intangible for them. And Danny Meyer, who's a world-class restaurateur, and Jim Kramer, who's an analyst, created this. And it connects directly to S&P 500 performance, as does the Forrester Index, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So here's a list of companies. They're not all squishy companies. Lots of different, very hard companies, all delivering different kinds of verticals. And here is what we see. I don't have the 14 numbers yet. Their return on S&P, 257, versus the everyday companies. Cha-ching! Forrester, if you prefer Forrester, and I show you both of these to show how there is consistency and congruence. Their leaders versus their laggards, 46.3 underneath the S&P performance. So there is clearly a connection. One more thing I want to show you, because this gets back to the idea of the power from a revenue standpoint on reliability, is you will see a 300% revenue gain by reducing negative word of mouth versus trying to go after those buzz moments, those wow moments. Earn the right to the wow, but do chicken right first. Does that make sense? Get your blocking and tackling down. Earn the right to those advocates who are going to tell your story. Has anybody not ever bought anything from Amazon? That's the way we've got to ask the question now, right? Amazon sold their first book in 1995. If they had not done books right, they would not have earned every single one of these categories. Amazon is a reliability engine. I want to tell you a story also, because I'm trying to give you ammo. Part of my job is to help you become storytellers. Throughout the organization, our work, I talk about a chief customer officer, a vice president of customer experience, or a team of people uniting the organization. Part of what we have to do is, first of all, create an understanding of what we even mean by customer experience. It's not the customer service complaint department, which I think for a long time people thought about. Service or reactive complaining is part of the journey, but it is in no way the entire journey that we're talking about here. And the father of giving us this methodology is actually Jan Carlson at SAS Airlines. He was actually profitable until 1981 at SAS, when they became profitable in 1982 by following and building out for us for the first time this idea of moments of truth, stages of an experience or a journey architected from the customer's life in versus listing the operational silos. And so what Jan Carlson did was he started to engage with their people and ask them, what are the stupid rules? What's getting in your way in the front line, in the back end, as you have to do legal, as you have to fill the cargo hold, as you have to hire for food? What's getting in your way to let you do what you know needs to be done for the customer? And he started getting rid of all of the things that got in the way from an employee standpoint. And then they moved on to customers. This methodology of mapping moments of truth is actually what I did in 1983 at Land's End. And it was a big part of how we grew that business, 40 to 60% a year. And it's continued to grow for them. They've actually exceeded those up till 2014 as well. So I want to walk you through a sneak peek of the upcoming book. It's coming out in June. It's called Chief Customer Officer 2.0. It's all new content from my very first book. And it's based on coaching executive teams and people like you who are in charge of leading the customer experience effort around the world. And it's very deliberate because I've broken the work into what I call 5 competencies. And I call them competencies because a lot of our work in this area syncs to the survey score. The survey comes out, we react, we have situational customer focus. The time goes away, we go back to our day jobs. What you're going to see in each of these competencies is the survey is part of the journey. It's part of the storytelling that you tell, but it can't be the only thing that you do to get people's attention. It can't be the only thing you do to get people to care about customers' lives. Because at the end of the day, your job is to make customers human, to tell the story of their life in a compelling way, and to unite your leadership team to focus on the few versus the splatter shot of looking at everything, which is what people do when they do the regression analysis on survey results. Can you relate? So here's my first competency. And you heard this actually in the dog speech. And this is honoring and managing customers as an asset of your business. And what this means is let's give our leaders a simple language on how to talk about success when we've delivered a great experience. Meaning simple going into your data and getting agreement on what do we call a new customer. How do we identify it? How do we articulate it? And how do we say we have 12,000 or 5,000? And how do we call a lost or lapsed customer? And how do we articulate and visually show that? This changes everything. As we work with leaders around the world, what it does is it gives us simple math. And just getting agreement on that simple math is very powerful. Because it says, hey, they voted with their feet. They either stayed or they didn't. You could look at a couple things besides the actual in and out volume value numbers to also some behavioral things. For example, when we're in SaaS companies, software service companies, we look at if they bought this many products, how many are they really using? So there may be other behavioral, 2 or 3. This isn't one of those dashboards where the type space starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Just 2 or 3. And then the key is to have our leaders fearlessly start every meeting with these numbers. Here's why we're here. It's to grow the asset. This also prompts you to get into the identification to connect to that honor word. Are we really honoring these customers as assets? Are there any stupid rules or things we're doing that says we don't trust you? Competency 2 is taking people on a journey, like we learned in the SAS example, of redefining the work that we do in our business across the stages of our customer's life. In the new book, I give you an example of even how to write journey stages. We don't want to write journey stages by our operations. For example, I'll say, have you guys done journey mapping? And sales will say, yes, we have. Well, it's their acquisition strategy stages. Or marketing will show it's their uplift cross-sell stages. What we want to do is actually write the stages from the standpoint of how the customer thinks about it. And there's other things I prompt you in there in terms of knowing the emotions customers have in each stage, writing quotes you want to earn from the customer in each stage. And this is where we also want to get focus, move from boiling the ocean from those 1,500 or 2,000 or 200, I got really big there, 200 touch points to the top 15. And then, like everything else I teach you, I also want you to help leaders adopt a new language. Instead of going around the table and asking, how are you doing frontline or stores? How are you doing acquisition? How are we doing finance? Let's talk about how we're doing in each stage. And that starts to drive new cross-functional teams to improve end-to-end experiences versus individual silo-based things. Here's a little tool for you. As you work with your leaders, take those stages of your journey, and just getting to the names of the stages, by the way, will be interesting. And for each stage, ask, in this stage, are we 100% reliable? Is it always consistent? Is it mostly unreliable? Is this just a challenge for us? Or is it somewhere in the middle? It depends. And then circle where you are. And sometimes I do this on PowerPoint, and we can move the circle around. But what I actually call this a Vulcan mind meld. Because we leaders will come in and have kind of a false positive about how great we're doing. But when you start asking the question of, in this stage, is this an end-to-end complete experience that we're all aligned around, that's consistent, it will help them realize there's work to do. Another example of how to use this language. You know, a lot of leaders, sometimes the term moments of truth may feel a little too soft. And so for some of my clients that are very product-driven or have a strong CFO that we really want to engage, we call it instead a defector pipeline. Meaning, let's identify those inflection points where we need to rescue customers at risk, grow revenue, or embed relationship. And this is an example of a software as a service client. For example, follow-up on requests for information, onboarding follow-up after the contract experience. You know, in a B2B environment especially, the contract experience just doesn't feel great. It feels like there's a power pull, a lot of hidden agendas. After X number of calls to tech support or customer support, after a customer hasn't used something, when less than 1% of products have been purchased, pre-renewal contract, rather than making it be a sales contact, make sure we're solving all the things that have been issues to earn the right, ultimately, to growth. Follow up to detractors, for those of you embracing NPS, and then calling lost customers. In fact, when I was at Allstate, we got 35% of our customers back at the time because we called them and noticed they had left and got them back again by helping them with a better solution. Competency 3 is building a customer listening path. And so this is where that survey work comes in. But what I want to introduce to you is more opportunity to storytell than just a survey. So what I want to introduce to you is more opportunity in Competency 3 than a survey. And this means really being a storyteller. And the idea of those stages of the experience now become your framework under which everything else starts to line up. So the repeating of the journey stages gives you as a storyteller and a uniter of the organization this consistent framework. So there are several kinds of listening that you can engage with. One is what I call unaided listening or voluntary feedback. Your customers are interacting with you on a regular basis and they're telling you things they like and things they don't like. It's probably unlikely that you've created a common categorization for those things, right? Because if you haven't commonly categorized those, we get in the meetings with our CEOs and we read what I call the bleeding heart letters. Oh, this customer is so unhappy, but we don't have what we need, which is volume and convergence. We need enough volume of the same issue happening enough times to be able to convince people this is really an issue. That's just the facts. If you can start to trend what you hear on your website, what you talk about or hear from your customers on your call centers, and converge it in a categorization that rolls up and then is starting to be mapped by stage, you're going to start to get people's attention. You layer onto that also your survey information. As you get survey data and survey information, I encourage you now to start cross-tabbing and looking at it, not by survey question, but where in the stage it falls, so that you can start to coagulate's a funny word, converge, makes me think of eggs, right? To converge, to converge this information to tell the story. The last piece of listening, which is very important, is experiential listening. It goes back to what I told you about USAA. Create a process called Be a Customer and make every single leader in your organization have to do what your customers have to do. At Adobe, which is in the new book, they have an executive immersion process where they have to actually go through the processes. It's tied to their compensation. It's very, very powerful and very important. And again, you align all of this so you can now storytell by stage of the experience, and you're going to see where the emerging issues are. Instead of every leader by silo picking their own project, you want to get the leaders together to agree on the few versus splattershotting against the many. The fourth competency is getting out ahead of that even, knowing before your customers tell you when your experience is unreliable. And this is the intersection of Lean Six Sigma, customer experience design, and quality. So remember I talked to you about the top 10 to 15 moments of truth. If you really focus on those and get down to those, you should be able to get to a point where you process map them out and know the operational processes where you have to be firing on all cylinders to deliver reliability to your customers. Your executives should care about the reliability of those top 5 to 6 metrics across your journey with as much rigor as they care about sales or EBITDA or growth, because where your performance in those top operational metrics go, so does your long-term customer growth. So this is another way, and you line that up across your journey, so you're telling a long run-on sentence. As a result of the experience our customers delivered to us this past month or year or quarter, let me walk you through the journey that we delivered. Let's first start with customers as assets and talk about, did we earn the right to growth? Here's how many new customers we brought in, volume and value. Here's how many we lost, volume and value. And behaviorally, here's where the shifting in our customer relationship is based on some examples that occurred. Now let's traverse the journey of the experience so we can diagnose and backwards engineer what happened, so as a leadership team and as a company we can focus on the things that will have the greatest impact. In stage 2, we see that the complaints spiked this past month in that area. Well, looking at our operational metrics, we see in Competency 4, it's no wonder, because we were missing the cycle time on that operational deliverable 80% of the time. Our survey question that lined up in there shows us that our Net Promoter Score, or our survey metric, was also down for that quarter. And those of you executives who tried to go through this process, how was it for you? Was it as good or better, or was it the same of what you heard? Now what you've got is the power of convergence, and we're starting with the customer's life. A lot of the customer conversation is our heads are down and we're churning and paging through spreadsheets, looking at PowerPoints or survey results or red, yellow, green dots of project plans. We need to move it from project plan movement to customer life improvement. That will change everything. Competency 5 wraps it all together. This is what I call the prove it to me competency, meaning your leaders need to change their behavior to enable the rest of these 5 competencies to happen. If you want to build an integrated listening system where you aggregate all of your categories and content, people need to be willing to give up a little bit of their ownership by silo. If you want to talk about customers as assets, we've got to move the ownership of the sales numbers out of sales, and leaders have to agree on what a new customer is, what a lost customer is. And most importantly, we need to drive united accountability. The Achilles heel of customer experience in many organizations is how we react to survey scores and how we do annual planning. One of the things that I'm a huge fan of is something we call a customer room, which is every month and quarter and before annual planning, you actually map these stages on the wall. You can use butcher paper, it doesn't have to be high tech, and you simply do a show and tell. It should be very experiential of the story of your customer's life. So you show your visual of your volume and value, and then stage by stage, you show the trending of your complaints. You can actually show your screenshots, what the customer gets, show the complaint trending, your operational metrics, and your survey scores. And then start circling as you go through by stage, talk with your leadership team or wherever you're socializing this, and circle the things that emerge. And then as you go across each stage, you might see 9 or 10 big issues. You don't say, okay, everybody now go work on those, which is what happens now. Instead, we say, okay, which 3 are we going to work on? Do we have capacity to work on 3? How are we going to create capacity to work on 3? And if we're going to work on these 3, who are you going to loan out your key people to work on this? If that doesn't happen, you are, what I've seen all around the world, is a beggar. Please focus on this problem. Please give me a person to work on. Please come and see the report. Who can relate to this? We need to put it in their lap to have them be part of the board of directors. Your job is to build the engine, to enable them to come together, to make the decisions, to focus on the right things, to give the resources, to communicate the story, to kill the stupid rules, to drive the business engine, to improve customers' lives. And that's really what this does. A couple things to think about. Are your leaders united? As you start working through this and in your work, are they taking personal ownership? Or is what's happening to you what's happened to me, where you can swear they have a clipboard and they've checked customer off the list as they've given you the job? Do they establish role clarity? Not just for you, but what is their skin in the game? The reason I built the 5 competencies this way is they're very tactical. At the end of each chapter in this new book, I actually give you recipe cards for what leaders have to do, because we need to get that granular around it. Do you drive regular accountability, your version of the customer room? Political air cover. This work is difficult because you're going to get in people's stuff. Every job I ever had, people just wanted me to go away. Imagine that. And then finally, a hard one, insist on corporate patience. Now, we're not saying it's going to take us 5 years. What we do, and you'll see in each of these, is we've broken it in so you can start taking action quickly. But know that for it to become your full engine, it will take a while, but we're going to start throwing off tactics and actions right away. And the key to that is demystify the roadmap. Build a very simple shopping mall map. Here are the 5 things we're going to do. Here's where we are in number 1. Here's where we are in number 2. People are visual learners. Simplify the story and be the storyteller and constantly connect them back. Lots of cool examples in there. In fact, the Smithsonian Institute just hired a guy who's rebuilding the whole Smithsonian journey across their 22 properties and the zoo, and there's the visual map of the new Smithsonian journey is in there. The zip car journey is in there. Visual learning is very, very powerful here. So to summarize, here's the 5 competencies that are the engine for growth. Managing and honoring your customers as an asset. Aligning around experience. Creating and building a path to listening that jives to the stages. Proactive experience, reliability, and over time innovation. And then finally, one company, accountability, and leadership and culture. So I'm going to end with that, leave you a little bit of resources for you to go after. Lots of great information on my blog, and the new book is coming out in 2015 in June. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.